Hey guys, it's Taylor here. I'm making this video today to talk with you about the advocacy for weightlifting in the youth community. I'd like to just give you a little bit of background on weightlifting in general. So, the theory of weightlifting, it dates back to around 5000 BC, but we don't really know yet because the only scriptured evidence we have is from around 300 BC, which is when society started using weightlifting as a sport. And in China's Zhou dynasty, actually, military individuals were required to pass weightlifting standards to be accepted in their military. Olympic weightlifting first appeared in the big leagues in 1896. Since then, besides the 1900 Olympics, weightlifting has been a competitive sport in the Olympic Games. The argument that I'm talking about is lifting weights detrimental to youth development, and we're going to be looking at pros and cons of the physical and mental effects that it has on them. Some physical effects weight training can have on a individual is a change in bone density, actually make your bones stronger, and it can actually give them more depth to them. Hypertrophy is something that people that lift weights a lot experience. It's when the muscle tissue that you break down from lifting weights grows larger because your body repairs itself. Body composition, weightlifting can enhance people's posture. It can help them, stand up straighter. Some cons that can happen when you're weightlifting is obviously injury. Especially for younger children, that's definitely a lot harder to talk about. Because if you injure yourself when you're young, it can possibly, stunt your growth when you're older, and it can hurt you. The system in the body that weightlifting affects the most in children is the endocrine system. The endocrine system is responsible for regulating metabolism and the release of hormones in the body. The responses that adults and children experience from weightlifting are pretty much the same. Obviously, in adults, they have more just anything inside of them, so they're going to experience an increase in they're going to experience more increase in the hormones and endorphins that are released than children. And then the hypothalamus actually releases growth hormones in the body in response to exercise, and this is majorly the same between children and adults. Some mental effects of weight training on children: males and females both produce testosterone, but males produce much more of it. The studies have found that in weight training, there's an increase in dopamine, which is considered the happy hormones. Some cons that weightlifting can have, if it's too much on a person, it can disrupt their childhood and even their family life. It's pretty much the same across the board with all athletes. If they do it way too much and they don't get to live out their childhood or have fun or go outside and play with their friends, they're gonna probably experience some kind of stress. Children nowadays we see are a lot more worried about their image to the people around them. They like to have the nicest things. They like to dress in the nicest clothes. And honestly, when I was a kid, I did not care how I looked when I came to school. So a lot of times when we're looking at weight training effects in obese children, we see a blunt of growth hormones in the overweight children, which primarily means that they're just getting blocked from being secreted during exercise, during and after exercise. After exercise, though, we see a large decrease in insulin immediately after anaerobic exercise, which a lot of times in obese children we see a great amount of insulin buildup in the body, and a lot of studies point to the insulin affecting their ability to lose weight. We see another growth hormone named IGF-1 released by the liver in whenever there is a lot of anaerobic exercise involved with obese children. Obesity decreases the effect that growth hormones have in response to exercise. So once again, they're blunting the growth hormones their own bodies are. And then resting levels of leptin decrease as weight is lost, which can further help them decrease the amount of mass they have on their body. An expert that I An expert that I referenced before, Paul Stricker, writes that age is a big factor. To carry out weight training effectively, athletes must have correct form and be able to move the weight in a safe and sufficient manner. In most cases, it would not be appropriate or safe to allow weight training before age 7, which I agree with. Milestones such as attention span, ability to stay focused, and maturity to accept and understand instructions all apply to the age of the person lifting weights. A problem that we see in the weightlifting community, especially with high school students, is the use of anabolic steroids. Anabolic steroids have been on the rise recently, and actually, steroid use is at its highest point since the early 90s. Daniel Denoon from WebMD has reported that we had been looking at 1 to 2% of girls using anabolic steroids in high school and around 5 to 6% of guys. And now the girls that are using anabolic steroids are actually over 5%. A lot of this, I think, is due to the fact that information is so easily accessible. The rising use of anabolic steroids can be attributed to social media, a decrease in quality of education. In modern times, for some reason, we see the age of people doing the age of these kids doing these steroids is actually decreasing. I personally have never done anabolic steroids or used any other kind of performance enhancing steroids, drugs, I mean. But I know a lot of people and a lot of guys that I went to high school with had used them. In the next few months, from what I remember, you could see a massive change in their mood swings. You could see a massive change in their body composition, their structure, and just the way they talked in general. Now, steroids have a huge effect on a developing body. Even in high school, the mental and physical effects can be tremendous. A good amount of athletes that abuse anabolic steroids suffer from depression, manic disorder, and psychosis. Psychosis is a mental disorder where you lose touch with reality. You're in your own world, and anything you look and see might not be there. Some physical effects that anabolic steroids can have on a body is the bone density. It actually decreases bone density, and it can make your bones more brittle. It actually makes you more prone to injury. It can cause insomnia, which can lead to abuse of another drug like sleeping pills. And then it also brings you to a higher risk of energy. It can dehydrate your body really quickly, and so that can lead you. It can lead to you're hurting yourself in some way. Now, I want to be clear on the fact between weight training and strength training. Both are sometimes categorized in this, put in the same category, but they're not the same at all. Weight training is a very competitive sport. It's mostly coupled with max output with weights and only 1 to 2 reps of a high weight percentage. And then strength training typically has less weights, higher reps, and usually it's non-competitive. Strength training is usually for your own personal look or gain. For my interview, I interviewed with Becky from the YMCA, and she's the youth and family coordinator for the Parkville YMCA. Some of the questions I asked her is, does the YMCA advocate for youth lifting competitions? And she said no to that. Although they do have introductory weight strength training for younger children. I asked her how young can a trainee be to train with a personal trainer. The youngest children that she trains is 13 years old, but an introduction can start from 9 to 11 years. And then I asked her what she would recommend for a child that wants to start lifting weights. And she said that she recommends 13 years old as the youngest for a child to get into weightlifting in general. So what can we conclude so far? Too young to lift weights, to lift heavy weights is definitely is absolutely plausible at this point. Children lifting weights prior to puberty, when they have an influx of testosterone and other hormones, are at a greater risk of injury, and proper guidance and coaching is of the utmost importance if a younger person is to lift weights in general. Although the risk is greater, the fact of the matter is that training is purely subjective. If an individual feels like he or she is ready, then he or she is most likely ready. Thank you.